Today we have as a 2004 released Thai supernatural horror film called Shudder.
So, without further ado, let's begin.
At the start of the movie we see a group of friends having dinner together. They were all happy and laughing with each other, having a lot of fun. There we see our lead characters, Don and his girlfriend Jane, inside a car. While returning from the party, Jane says to Don, "Your friends are fun." Then suddenly their car hits someone on the road and drives over their body. They look from inside their car and see a girl in a school dress lying dead on the road. Jane was about to get out the car and help the girl, but Don says that they shouldn't get involved in all this mess and they should just leave. They then flee the scene. A few days pass by, then we see Don clicking pictures. He was a professional photographer, so he was invited to click the pictures of graduating students. While clicking the group picture, he sees a weird-looking woman through his camera lens. But when he removes the camera and looks through his eyes, the woman disappears. We see Jane and Don talking with each other, and Jane gets mad at Don and she says that they should have helped the girl. Don goes to a photo studio where he had given the photos to get processed and printed. Jane had just arrived in Don's apartment and she hears water running in his apartment studio. She also sees a shadow of someone from the door, then suddenly she hears someone twisting the doorknob violent that scares her. She enters the room but she finds no one inside. She sees the tap was open and she goes near it. She sees a head of a woman floating on the water. Jane then rushes towards the door, but the door was locked and she sees a girl screaming, walking towards her. Then Jane suddenly wakes up with tears in her eyes. It was only a dream. Jane and Don were going through those photos and she asks Don, "How did all the photos get damaged?" While looking at the group picture, he sees the same scary women he had previously seen. Jane says that she could be the same girl they had killed on the road. They research about the accidents that happened on that month. They even go to the spot where they had hit the girl. They talk with the traffic police and ask if there was a girl who died by accident on that day, but the traffic police says that no one died in that way recently. He even says that there was no accident recorded that day. Don then calls the hospital and asks if any injured girl had been admitted after a road accident on that day, but no such cases appeared at the hospitals nearby. Jane was also surprised and says that if the girl had died then it would have been on news, and if she was injured then the hospital would know about it. How can she suddenly disappear from the face of Earth? Don then goes to his apartment and prepares to process the photo films in his own apartment studio, while looking at the scary woman. Previously, the woman had her head turned to a side, but suddenly it seemed like her head moved and was staring at Don through the photograph. Next day, we see Jane returning from her classes, and on her way home she finds a magazine about ghosts, whereas Don was in his apartment studio. Then someone appears behind him. Don thinks that it was Jane and says, "Today you came early." Then suddenly his phone rings. It was Jane, who says that today she will arrive late at his apartment. Don gets cold shivers and he slowly goes towards his studio. He finds no one inside. He wonders who was inside the studio with him previously. Don had started experiencing shoulders pain since the day of that accident. He tells that to Jane while driving the car. Then they go to meet that magazine's writer. They tell him about the girl in the photo. The writer also says that ghosts do appear in photos. He says that such ghosts can also be seen in Polaroid cameras. He then proceeds to show them the Polaroid's pictures. He even says that Polaroid's pictures cannot be edited, so these are all true. The ghosts must be having difficult time finding peace, so they must be appearing in the photos. Jane then questions, "Why is the woman suddenly appearing in our photos?" Don was working on the camera, then suddenly the lights goes off in the room. The camera starts clicking pictures on its own with flashlights. Don gets terrified and falls to the ground. He sees the same girl approaching him during the flashes. The scary face of the girl appears right in front of Don's face. Then suddenly his room's lights and the girl was nowhere to be seen. He was having severe neck pain, so he visits the doctor for checkup. He stands on the weighing machine to see his body weight, but the measurement surprised the nurse. His body weight was more than what it should have been. Doctor also finds no disease related to his neck pain, as the x-ray reports were normal, and he advises Don that he shouldn't be worried about it. He goes to his house and starts drinking water. Then suddenly the door gets opened. It was one of his closest friend whom we had seen at the beginning of the movie. The friend says, "Give me those photos." Don asks, "What are you talking about?" The friend says, "The girl will kill us, please give me those photos." The friend seemed anxious and scared of someone. Don says, "Wait, I will call your wife," and he goes near his telephone. Then suddenly we see the friend leave the scene. At the evening, Jane comes to meet Don. Don had severe shoulders pain. He was holding his neck. It seemed like he was looking for something. Jane then sees the pictures with ghosts in them and she notices something in a room of the building. She takes a Polaroid camera and clicks pictures. The room was a biology laboratory of the college. Jane again starts clicking pictures. She sees a girl standing in front of her in the picture. He gets scared and was rushing outside the laboratory. Then suddenly a photograph hung on the wall falls and breaks. She looks at the picture and she thinks that the girl in the picture seemed similar to the girl that had run over by their car. She rushes to Don's apartment and goes through his yearbook. Then she finds the picture of the same girl with her boyfriend Don. Don goes to meet his friend at his house as he was worried about him. Don sees that the entire house was a mess. A table had a lot of pictures. The pictures also shadows like Don's pictures. Then Don sees his friend commit suicide by jumping from the window. Don gets scared and helpless as he couldn't do anything for his friend. At the evening, Don meets his deceased friend's wife and she says that you all are going insane and I know you will also kill yourself. Don was puzzled by her words and asks her what is she talking about. Then he gets to know that his other two friends had committed suicide in the same way. Then we see Don and Jane inside the car. Don was lost in his thoughts. Then Jane asks him who is this girl. Don says that he had met this girl in college and she was shy, introvert, always alone. I also felt bad for her so I would also accompany her. We both started liking each other. He had keen interest in photography but couldn't afford the camera, but the girl had gifted him a camera. But his friends were bully and used to bully the girl and Don hadn't revealed about his relationship with the girl to his friends. His friends start touching and teasing the girl but Don does nothing. He just ignores them all and suddenly he dumps the girl. But the girl couldn't take it so she had even tried committing suicide. And he says that the girl suddenly disappeared and no one had any idea about her whereabouts. Jane gets angry. Why did you not help her and stand by her against your friends? Now all my friends are dead, replies Don. He couldn't tolerate the shoulder pain so he takes some medication and lies on Jane's lap. Don tells Jane, I wish I could correct my past mistake. The camera given by the girl was before then and it was clicking picture on its own. Jane and Don decide that they should look for that girl and they leave their apartment at night. He stops his car in red light but behind him he sees the same girl lying on the road. And the girl gets up and was standing on the road. Don gets scared and drives his car fast. Jane asks Don, why are you driving so fast? What happened? At the Jane's side window the same girl appears and stares at them creepily. Then the girl appears in front of their car laughing. Then Don suddenly stops the car. In the morning they stop by a place, ask about the directions. Then we see a monk kid staring at Don and he seemed scared. The kid then hurriedly walks away from Don. Don finds it quiet, unusual. They go inside the house of the same high school shy girl. They meet her mother. She says that my daughter isn't well, she is just sleeping. Both Don and Jane were surprised after hearing that. Her mother also says that my daughter doesn't have many friends and today I am preparing her favorite food. She tells Don and Jane to wait. The girl's mother then goes outside. Jane and Don go towards the girl's room. They see a girl facing the other side sleeping on the bed. As Don tried to turn her head, it was rotten dead body of the girl, with all bones visible on the surface. Jane asks the mother, why are you keeping her in such condition? You should cremate her. Her soul isn't able to rest in peace. The mother then crying and says, my daughter, please return back to me. They organize a cremation ceremony. The neighbor tells Don that the mother found her daughter overdosing on drugs. She took her daughter to a hospital but the daughter jumped from the top of the building. And she died, but her mother was having a difficult time accepting her daughter's death. So she kept her daughter in her house and takes care of her like she was alive. Even the neighbors were afraid to tell the mother anything. During the rituals, Don feels the presence of that girl behind him, like he was holding him. At night, Don couldn't fall asleep in the hotel. Jane was also awake. They realized that they had hit the girl's ghost, so there were no any injured girl or dead girl in that area. Don says to Jane that she will kill me now as I have done horrible things to her. I am ready to die. Jane says don't talking such nonsense and they both fall asleep. At night, Don suddenly wakes up. His blanket was slipping from his bed. Then he sees the same girl pulling on his blanket. Don tries to wake Jane, then the ghost disappears. Don looks under the bed, but the ghost appears at his side. Don then runs towards the corridor. The ghost was walking upside down on the ceiling towards Don. Don then rushes outside the house and he goes down the stairs. The ghost also follows him in the same way but an upside down walk. Then Don falls on the ground. Don opens his eyes. In the hospital he had sustained multiple injuries. Don seemed scared, so Jane consoled that I don't know what had happened previously. But from now on everything will be fine. The same day the dead body of girl was incinerated. They are now driving towards their house. Jane had gone to the studio to get the pictures. She looks at those pictures and sees the pictures clicked by the camera on its own. She saw the same shadow. She kept the pictures one after the other and she could see the girl's ghost moving towards a bookshelf. Jane looks through the same bookshelf and she finds some negative films of photos. She then processes the pictures where she sees that Don's 3 friends had sexually assaulted the girl in the same biology laboratory. Don then comes to the scene and asks Jane, why are you crying? Jane gets angry, disgusted with Dawn, and says that you have committed a grave sin. I can never forgive you. Jane was about to leave the apartment, then Dawn grabs her hand and says, I haven't done anything, I had just clicked those pictures. Dawn hadn't helped the girl, but he had kept on clicking the pictures. The girl had called Dawn's name multiple times for help, but he hadn't helped the girl. Dawn then sees the picture clicked by Jane in the biology laboratory. Then Dawn starts taking pictures and yells, where are you? And keeps on calling the girl's ghost, but she doesn't find her. Then he smashes the camera onto the wall and the camera clicks his picture on its own. Dawn slowly goes near the Polaroid to look at the picture. He picks the Polaroid and what he sees completely shakes Dawn to his core. The ghost was sitting on his shoulder the whole time. So that's why after the accident Dawn started having shoulder pain. His body was abnormal and the monk kid seemed afraid of him. The ghost then blocks Dawn's eyes. Dawn then jumps from his apartment's window. After a few days, Jane goes to meet Dawn in the hospital. He seemed tired, afraid, and mentally ill. Then the door moves, and we could clearly see the girl sitting on his shoulder in the reflection. Thank you for watching. If you like such contents, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Upside down on the ceiling towards Dawn. Dawn then rushes outside the house and he goes down the stairs. The ghost also follows him in the same way but an upside down walk. Then Dawn falls on the ground. Dawn opens his eyes. In the hospital he had sustained multiple injuries. Dawn seemed scared, so Jane consoled that I don't know what had happened previously, but from now on everything will be fine. The same day the dead body of girl was incinerated. They are now driving towards their house. Jane had gone to the studio to get the pictures. She looks at those pictures and sees the pictures clicked by the camera on its own. She saw the same shadow. She kept the pictures one after the other and she could see the girl's ghost moving towards a bookshelf. Jane looks through the same bookshelf and she finds some negative films of photos. She then processes the pictures where she sees that Dawn's 3 friends had sexually assaulted the girl in the same biology laboratory. Dawn then comes to the scene and asks Jane, why are you crying? Jane gets angry, disgusted with Dawn, and says that you have committed a grave sin. I can never forgive you. Jane was about to leave the apartment, then Dawn grabs her hand and says, I haven't done anything, I had just clicked those pictures. Dawn hadn't helped the girl, but he had kept on clicking the pictures. The girl had called Dawn's name multiple times for help, but he hadn't helped the girl. Dawn then sees the picture clicked by Jane in the biology laboratory. Then Dawn starts taking pictures and yells, where are you? And keeps on calling the girl's ghost, but she doesn't find her. Then he smashes the camera onto the wall and the camera clicks his picture on its own. Dawn slowly goes near the Polaroid to look at the picture. He picks the Polaroid and what he sees completely shakes Dawn to his core. The ghost was sitting on his shoulder the whole time. So that's why after the accident Dawn started having shoulder pain. His body was abnormal and the monk kid seemed afraid of him. The ghost then blocks Dawn's eyes. Dawn then jumps from his apartment's window. After a few days, Jane goes to meet Dawn in the hospital. He seemed tired, afraid, and mentally ill. Then the door moves and we could clearly see the girl sitting on his shoulder in the reflection. Thank you for watching. If you like such contents, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel.